From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Hi, and welcome to She's the Boss, which is the show all about female founders and women doing amazing things in business. And there are loads of them doing it. So today I'm very excited. I've got two fabulous guests. I've got Kathy Nyo, who is running Keynote Worthy and is all about diversity in business, which I'm dying to hear more about. And Mandi Gunsberger, who I knew when she was where she founded Babyology and ran it. She's now sold it and is an entrepreneur, speaker and advisor. So welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So my first question is, I'm going to run straight into it and I'm going to hit you up, Kathy, with can you tell me what you're doing now, what Keynote Worthy is and why?
Yeah, so just in a nutshell, I think most of us are sick of seeing the usual suspects, but the problem is that some of us...
No, hang on, go back. What are the usual suspects? Because I know we are sick of it, and you're right.
Usual
but let's
suspects.
just assume for people that don't know, what do you mean by that?
The usual suspects are the people that we see up on stage and up on media all the time. So typically, male, stale and pale. PMS, as if you were
Pale,
to give it an
stale.
acronym.
I love that, PMS. And
yeah.
Look at how diverse we are. So we're women and we're not all pale, male and whatever.
And culturally diverse as
yes,
well.
Right. So
yeah, so the problem with having the same people up on stage all the time is that you basically hear and see the same perspectives all the time, and that's not representative of Australia and globally as well, because where we are geographically, we are in a great position to do businesses with so many different countries. But if we do want that cultural intelligence, that inclusion, and having just that, to broaden the perspective, we need to interact with different people. So that's why I founded Keynote Worthy. After going to so many events and being really frustrated, I thought, well, why not find a solution, right?
yeah, no, and ironically, you and I met basically in a LinkedIn thread. In a LinkedIn thread about exactly that topic, with a whole lot of guys who were in there going, we'd have female speakers, but we can't find them. And we were both going, you've got to be kidding me. So I was so excited to find out about Keynote Worthy. And I really want to hear a little bit more, but let's just quickly let Mandi, welcome Mandi, tell us a little bit about what you're, welcome. What are you doing these days and why? Tell me what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned before, Babyology was my fourth child. I normally refer to it as.
Okay.
So I launched that business in 2007 and sold that in 2017. So that was, an 11-year period of my life by the time it was acquired, and launched that really, living room, $5,000 on design and a logo, and that was pretty much it. Away I went. So when we sold it, it was quite a large company, 24 staff. We had 1 million unique visitors, 1.2 million Facebook fans, and we were reaching almost 40% of women in Australia, mums. So that was really exciting. And
somebody actually said earlier this week that if you were a mum in Australia and you haven't heard of Babyology, then there'd be something wrong with you. So, that is such a huge achievement.
No, it's not part of my life. Very
I'm interested to hear more about that.
But I sold that 17. I spent 2018 kind of coming down from that, mentoring, advising, and working out what came next. And then 2019, I moved my family, myself and my 3 kids and my husband, to Tuscany for a year. Oh. So we did the full, move overseas, living the dream. It was phenomenal. The kids went to school in Siena, and we pretty much travelled, wherever we wanted that whole year. So very excited that was last
and such good timing. Such good timing that you didn't try and do that this year.
We arrived back in Sydney in January 2020, so we just arrived back. So now I've actually launched a new non-for-profit website called Shut Down Shout Out, which was more about Corona and the COVID virus and how to support businesses that were doing amazing things here in Australia. So that's my new thing, and who knows what else I'm going to be doing later this year.
Oh, wow.
Your
so
fifth
I'm
child.
really interested. Can you tell me a little bit more about Shut Down Shout Out? What is that? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was just so impressed by seeing on everyone's Facebook pages, what restaurants were doing and gyms and nail salons going to people's houses and all that type of thing. But I really just launched a website and a platform where we could support those businesses, share them with the rest of Australia, have people support them and really celebrate what they were doing, because so many of these small businesses have just gone above and beyond. I've got a spin bike sitting in my lounge room that was from my local gym when they knew this was happening, the fact they started virtual classes and they gave us equipment, so I just thought it was a great place to put all of that detail on there, and now that website's growing quite nicely every day.
Oh, that's a beautiful initiative. I really love hearing about that. Now, I definitely want to go into your entrepreneurial journey in a second, because I am fascinated to know how you grew it so huge and then how you sold it. But Kathy, as a speaker bureau, which I guess keynote worthy is to an extent, how are you coping with COVID? What's been happening for you?
Well, for me, it's about how do I support speakers and event professionals at the moment, because even though, yes, the industry has slowed down, there is still a lot of work to be done. The point of difference that I have is that it focuses on inclusion at events. There's a lot of virtual events at the moment and they're not inclusive. So again, we're still seeing the usual suspects. So I guess still a lot of advocacy kind of work, but then balancing the conversation to be quite positive. So that's my natural style. I like to, add a bit of sass and humour in things.
I love your Facebook posts. You're very good at it. And your LinkedIn posts, I should say, as well.
Yeah, so my theory behind that is, well, because I'm also a writer as well, so I like to get creative in how I communicate messages. But I think when we keep on shouting or telling people that they're doing the wrong thing or something like that, people, naturally shut up. Like they don't want to listen. Yeah, they don't want to listen at all. And I think if we have a conversation about it or kind of talk about it in a constructive way, people will listen. So that's what I'm working on. Also supporting a lot of speakers who feel, I guess they're grieving because they have lost so many.
I would agree. I've got a lot of friends who are speakers and they've been like, my whole life, like everything that I do is over. My 25-year career's down the toilet. In the early days, they were really, really in shock and couldn't see what I would say the wood for the trees. They couldn't, because I was kind of going, well, if you go online, your audience will be, the world instead of just the room. And there is still that need for people to motivate. There's that need for people to build teams and to educate. So it hasn't stopped. It's just having to think of a different way of doing it. But I agree totally. I think there's been a lot of grief in people who are in the event business, whether they're speakers or running the events.
Yeah, that's right. And I've also got a friend who does weddings, he's just had all his business gone for the rest of the year. So, and we're talking like 400K kind of weddings as well.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
This is a time of innovation. People have to come up. I mean, if everything's going to be closed till the end of the year, particularly for weddings or for big events, then what else can they do? And to me, there are lots of opportunities to do team building and educating and whatever online, but maybe with physical packages that get sent to people that will be part of the talk or whatever. It's going to be really interesting to see how those industries evolve over the next few months.
Yeah. I think, I'm just going to add that with the whole virtual presentations, it's pretty much a new skill. And if you haven't done a video presenting course, then it's going to be really difficult. You're not getting the same, you're not feeding off the audience and you're looking down the barrel of a camera. So I think that's going to be the next thing, like having a professional home production studio. So just talking to a couple of speakers about what their options are and how to get started.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, and how to engage if you've got 20, 40, 60. And I know some people are addressing, my brother has a big ad agency and he's addressing 100 people every morning. I mean, how you do that in a group online, I guess, is going to be a technique that if you learn is going to be really, really useful for probably the rest of your life. So it's a good skill to learn. So now, girls, I want to know a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey and how you have ended up doing what you're doing. So I'm going to start with Mandi because I am fascinated to know about babyology. and how it did go from $5,000 investment and doing it at home, which a lot of women do, and particularly back in the 2000s were setting up their businesses that way. But you actually took it to a whole other level and then went and got investment and all the rest of it. So tell me how that all worked.
It's really, really hard work. So I'll start with that. But yeah, if I think back to even the journey, it's definitely not a linear journey. And I think that's something to explore as well, because people think, oh, wow, you know, it's Mandi, she's got a business, or, you know, Jules has a business, but it might have taken you 5 attempts or whatever to get to that point. Yeah. So if I even think to, you know, when I was a kid and I, you know, wanted to always be the banker in Monopoly so I could steal money from my sister and, you know, sell her toys at a weekly auction in our bedroom. Like I always had thirst for knowledge, which my mum, by the way, stopped the auctions, but still.
I was going to say, that's a very positive spin on that. I love it.
No, it's fine. Yeah, she might not want to hear that, but yeah. And then my parents, like they worked very, very hard, and my dad was a real entrepreneur for having to be an entrepreneur to put food on the table. You know, he was a clown at kids' parties. He did a newspaper run. He ran a jewellery store. So I was always very inspired by him and what he was doing, and he was an amazing man. So I think that's really what got my creative thinking going. And at the age of 13, I started working in hairdressing salons and working at Woolworths, and I've always kind of worked out what my next step is. So then in my 20s, I actually launched a cookie company, but realising while I was doing full-time work, then actually coming home and baking cookies all night wasn't really a feasible thing to be doing.
Well, the side hustle at some stage does have to either become the job really or get ditched. Now you make
exactly.
cookies for
fun.
fun.
Onto a relocation company I launched, but again, got a few big clients and realised that because it all was on me, you know, a service-based business wouldn't be something I was able to do. So really, Babyology, when I launched that in 2007, was my third go at it. We'd just been living in San Francisco, came back to Australia. I was pregnant with the first child. I'm a Virgo, so I'm a complete anal over researcher, and it was really born by the fact that I researched every single pram cotton high chair in the world, not in Australia, and put that into a very detailed spreadsheet, and then registered a name and thought maybe other parents would want to know about the 400 prams and 500 high chairs that were out there in the market. And that's really how it launched. And I had a 1-year-old at the time.
So it launched as reviews, really? That was kind of where you started off?
Exactly. So we really launched, the initial business was me writing, and it was all content about baby products.
Right.
And that over the years morphed into many other things. We had to stay on our toes. We had to pivot the business a lot. We started launching events where we ran 400 people, baby shower events around the country.
Wow.
We launched a sidearm of subscription boxes so that we could bring in extra revenue. We were like, what else can we have these 1 million people do to engage with us? So, once our numbers started growing, it was really how to use that community and how to work with them to build other revenue streams off them.
Right, so how did you build the community at first? I mean, how do you get from, probably 5,000, I guess would have been a pretty good amount back in those days, to 1 million?
Yeah, I always remember when it stopped being people I knew, like it was stopping to be my mum from her bridge club and her friends and, people from high school. I'm like, oh, wow, I actually do not know these people visiting the website. So that was always a massive turning point. But yeah, it was really, I think, a lot about the type of content we used to do. We had a very strict ethos and very strict values on what we wrote about, and not doing clickbait and not doing anything like that. So if there was ever anything negative going on out there, we felt that as women and as parents, we wanted to be surrounded by good news stories so they could read all of that elsewhere, and you can guarantee if a child fell into an alligator pit, it would be somewhere, but it was just never on Babyology. I think the fact that we were a safe place for people to visit built a lot more community, and our community actually lifted us up quite a lot and stood up for us in those situations, saying, this is not appropriate here, take that conversation elsewhere, which it would be welcomed, the views and the content, but we very much stuck to what we did best.
And how did you market it? I mean, did you do that through mainly social, or did you actually go out and advertise, or were you doing PR?
Yeah, 2007. Yep. So I think I was doing PR in the very early days, and I also used to pound the trade show floors with flyers. It changed over the years, but I did all of that, and people used to say, "What's a blog? I don't know what a blog is," and I was trying to explain different things. But then it did become a lot of social. So we were very data heavy, and we tracked our data a lot. So we basically realized 97% of our community was on Facebook. So we spent a lot of time, a lot of money working on that, rather than, a lot of people try all over, but we realized Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, they just weren't nearly as powerful for the group of 25 to 40-year-old women.
I wonder whether people could even do that now with all the changes in algorithms, and suddenly your page with, thousands of people gets zero kind of love from anyone.
Yeah. And I always say that to people, it's much harder now. Like in 2007, it was a much easier game to play, I think, than trying to do the numbers now in 2020. We were at the beginning of Facebook and all that type of thing, so we were able to really harness those.
And then what led you to selling it? How did that work? Because I know that you had a big sell number of a few million happened. So how did you do that?
But that was a few years in the process. I also learned from mentors very early on that even when you go in to launch a business, you need an exit strategy. So we always had an exit in mind on who, when, where, how that might happen and what we needed to look like. Right. So we actually went out to raise money and not sell at that point. And then in the money raise, we had interest in people acquiring. So then I was running 2 processes. Anyone that's ever been through that will know it's pretty tough to have an acquisition process running at the same time as you do finance, as well as keeping all your numbers up and keeping your staff happy so that your numbers are still, a hockey stick, so everyone can go, wow, this is a great business to buy. So, yeah, that was a pretty tricky 18 months of our lives, hence the year off in Tuscany after that, just to recoup.
Absolutely. And I think you also mentioned to me before that you had a 400-page wiki so that when you handed it over, so if people organise their processes and get things documented, you can literally hand it over.
The very first day, because it makes it a lot more powerful and a lot bigger buy for someone. If you've got everything written down and it's not in your head or in your staff's head or anything like that, then really we left the business pretty much immediately after we sold it, which is unheard of in media. You normally have to stay on for a year or 2, but they felt like they had everything they wanted. They had links, they had processes, they had you name it in a document. So that was something my husband made us do from the very beginning, and anytime a staff member would ask a question, we'd say, look at the wiki. If it's not on the wiki, we'll add it to the wiki. So
brilliant. Yeah. That's really good advice for people who might be trying to set up their own businesses to sell at some stage. So Kathy, tell me about you and your entrepreneurial journey, because I think you started off in HR, didn't you? So what has that journey been like to setting up Keynote Worthy, which I guess is actually very complementary to where you started out? Tell us the journey.
So my entrepreneurial journey even started before corporate. So when I was a little kid, I was a bit of an asshole. I stole the neighbourhood flowers and tried to make a bouquet out of it.
Right, and then sell them.
And then try to resell it, but I didn't make any sales. So the lesson learnt was that you shouldn't steal and you need to have integrity to have a business.
Good takeaways.
And then throughout high school, I made like handmade earrings and that kind of stuff. Yeah, always had something on the side because I'm quite creative and I always need something, almost like an outlet for me. For some people, it might be video games or watching TV or whatever it is. For me, it was thinking about the next big idea or doing something to make money. And I think that was the problem, because my focus was on making money.
Rather than how can I help people, or what am I passionate about, which is sort of the two
what
other
am
ways
I
that people go into it.
truly passionate about. So when I was in my HR role, I set up a boot camp. So I'm also a qualified personal trainer. But when I did it, I was like, my heart is not really in it, but yet I still ran the boot camp, and it just became like a real chore. And then so I accidentally found Keynote Worthy a couple of years later, and you're right, it's very complementary to my HR career, because I did do a lot of advising and coaching to leaders and tried to make them recruit the right people, not their friends.
And so what was it, though, about Keynote Worthy that there must have been something, well, I'm assuming, that there was something that just made you went, right, that's it, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, I'm going to go and set up my own agency. So what happened? Was there?
What happened was that as an HR reporter, I went to a lot of events and conferences.
Right.
And I found that majority of the events I went to, I always felt out of place.
Right.
Like I didn't belong. And what really stood out was a speaker said, turn to someone that you wouldn't normally talk to.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, so many people just looked at me because I was this petite little Asian girl who looks very young for her age.
And someone they wouldn't normally talk to.
Someone normally talk to, and it was a safety conference. So very tall white dudes in steel cap boots. Everyone just looking at me, and then they were like circling around me as well. I'm just
You felt like
oh
you were
my
in
God.
a zoo.
I felt like, I was in a zoo. And then so I felt really pressured to say something to fill in the silence. I was just like, this is really awkward. And then that same conference, I went up to the stage and, well, this is after the event, to speak to the speaker because I just wanted to clarify a few points for my article. And then some guy just chimed in and then he was asking about my credentials as a writer. So he was basically asking me, in his words, what makes you qualified to write about this? And why are you here? And asking me all these questions. And then it just made me think, if I looked different, like a typical reporter, no one would ask me these questions. But because I look different and, I get these questions.
That's just so crazy, isn't it? Really, when you think, you go outside your door on any shopping strip anywhere, and there's a lot more than just those kind of people. So it's extraordinary that when you go into business, it's unusual. So I love it that you're trying to change things and mix it up, and there'll be no more excuses of, oh, well, I would get a woman to speak or I would get an Asian person to speak, but I don't know where to find one.
Yeah. But the problem is that there's a lot of talent out there, but I think the traditional bureaus and event professionals don't have inclusion in mind.
Yeah.
So they already have this bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, about what a leader should look like, what a speaker should look and sound like.
It's to me, you see it across so many things, and it's that they're going, we don't want to take the risk in case people don't like this speaker, so we'll go with something safe rather than going, why don't we take it? Because the upside of this is we might get twice as many people taking it up as usual, and they just don't think outside the box like that.
Yeah, that's right. There's definitely that, whole selling of tickets, bums on seats, leads and all that, which
it's that old mentality.
I totally get.
Yeah. But it's very old. I get it, but I'm frustrated by it, and you obviously are as well. But listen, we haven't got that much longer, so I want to now see if we can offer some tips for other women that might be either starting their own business or are in business and really want to grow it, maybe to an exit. So let me start with you, Mandi. Have you got any tips or anything that's happened on your journey that someone could learn from for their own business?
Yeah, so many. I think, all of us, we make so many mistakes when we do this. I remember speaking to someone at a conference who said to me, her 5th business is her best one. And I was like, I do not know if I have it in me to get to that point. So one of my number one tips that I think for me worked really well was that we just really, really, really simplified all our goals at the very beginning. So if you're just starting out or you've been in business for a couple of years, people find it hard to believe, for our first 6 years in business, we had no marketing plans, no strategy, no nothing. All we did was I wanted more revenue every day and I wanted more eyeballs. So as long as those two metrics were going up, I could check 10 times a day and I was like, great, more people are reading our content, we're making more revenue. I actually wasn't distracted at all by all the other things that come with it. So I think sometimes, spending too much time putting all that together and being too overwhelmed because you have so many boxes to tick along the way can actually deter you from going into it or from making ends meet.
So basically just be organic, be authentic, try and build your community, and it will all come.
And anyone who's in business, it's, make more revenue. So if day to day today your revenue is going up, or your community or your engagement or whatever it is you're doing, that's great, pat on the back. And it doesn't need to be what I'm going to be doing 1 month, 2 months, 8 months, 12 months from now, because you can work that out later, because it becomes much more interesting to do that. And then the other thing that I'm sure you guys also agree with is just having a really thick skin. So,
Yes,
you know, it can be
don't
amazing.
take rejection personally.
Yeah, exactly. It can be amazing, and you wake up and you're euphoric and you pinch yourself because you can't believe you do this on a daily basis. But then for whatever reason, the next day you are in the fetal position because, you know, staff have resigned, you've lost an account, a big payment hasn't come in, you know, anything could be going on. And it really has those huge ups and downs, I think, doing the type of thing that we do in these journeys that we go on. So I think it's all about, you know, going with your gut, going what you know, finding something that you love doing, because if you love it, you can take those big ups and downs.
That's
and when
right.
you're over the down, you've had your cry, you've done it, you just move on and you work out how to bypass that and how to make things work again.
That is really good, and resilience and being able to weather the storms is super important if you are going to go on a journey like that.
There are going to be storms. It's a known, you know, it's just a known fact.
It's just how big they are and how you manage them, and have you got an umbrella? Kathy, can you tell us any tips that you've learned along the way? Obviously, one of them being, guys, try and be more inclusive of the whole of society.
Yeah, that's right.
What about in terms of any entrepreneurial tips?
Sure. So 2 tips. Number 1 is to make sure that there's a market need for it, and don't do it just because it's sexy. So to give you an example, I've seen a lot of people start their own swimwear label, eco swimwear label. So if you were genuine about sustainability and the environment and everything like that, you would support other businesses.
Yes.
So, you know, try to remove the ego out if possible. And number 2 is to make sure that you have a support network, because it hasn't been easy for me. Starting a business is really hard, but even more hard if you don't have people to back you, to support you, because I know for most women, we have this imposter syndrome, and we always have this voice in our head that tells us sometimes that we're not good enough, or maybe this isn't a good idea. So just having a network to push you and to promote you, and to, you know, be your cheer squad.
And
that's really important.
I think you have to, particularly if you're trying to do something that hasn't been done before, which both of you have done, which I have done with my Handle Your Own PR business as well. But what we're trying to do is create something new. So there's even more resistance than there is if you were opening another milk bar or a accounting service or whatever it might be. So you really have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to stick to your guns and keep going. You two have been such inspiring guests. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm sure everybody has found that really, really interesting, and hopefully they've learned a few tips along the way as well. But you're both of your businesses are awesome. Quickly, can you, Kathy, if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way of getting hold of you? How can they find your website?
Yeah, it's just keynoteworthy.com.au, and you can also find me on all social media channels. Yes, great. And she's Catherine or Kathy Nyo if you're looking for it. And then, Mandi, what's the best way for people to get hold of you these days?
On my website, mandigunsberger.com. So if you can find me there, or also LinkedIn, anywhere else. And if you are out there and you've got a business and you're doing something amazing right now, just fill in a form on Shutdown Shoutout, and I would happily love to promote whatever you're doing to the rest of Australia.
Right, so we just go to Shutdown Shoutout and we go to Keynote Worthy if we want to get hold of you. Is there any one more tip that either of you have, or any one little story that we've got an extra minute or so to see if there's anything else that you want to impart?
I might just
put me on the spot.
I might just leave you with the fact that really, guys, nothing happens overnight. So I think we all love to read about the unicorns, the businesses itself for, $80 million after 6 months. But really, and I don't know about you, Kathy, but I feel it comes down to persistence, hard work, time. Whenever everyone says, oh, baby, I'll be successful, I say it took me 11 years. So 11 years is a big chunk of time. So, yes, I think don't get disheartened if you've been at it for a few years and you're still trying to build it up. It does take time.
Oh, that's a fantastic advice, and don't give up. And Kathy, do you have another little tip that we can give you? I am putting you on the spot.
Well, just try to have fun and don't take yourself too seriously. I think just having that kind of sense check every now and then. So I've actually got a few wigs in this room at the moment. I should have put one on, but just have some fun. It's particularly during this time because it's a really stressful time. We need to loosen up a little bit more, even though it's really hard.
I think that's fantastic advice. I mean, really, to get through all of this, we all need to put a smile on our faces. Well, thank you both so much, as I said. And for anyone that's watching, I hope you've learned a lot, and that you'll come and join us next week on She's the Boss, where we'll be talking to two more fabulous female entrepreneurs, female founders, and see what their journey has been like, but also what we can learn from their journey. So thank you for joining me.